again in April, early April, late March, early April. So timing seems good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of timing, it is that time. And you guys kind of brought open the subject tonight, the topic we'll be discussing. Welcome to Tribe Talk, everybody. Sunday, February 21st, 2021. The purpose of the Tribe Talk, as always, is to gather a group of like-minded people together so that we can communicate, hopefully improving communications. It's a talk with coaches, hopefully like you. And the one caveat that I must throw out there immediately is that this is not sponsored by any organization, regardless of who attends. So this is a group of coaches, instructors getting together to talk in hopes that we can share ideas and thoughts about improving rider education training in the United States and beyond sometimes. A few notes on Tribe Talk etiquette. I won't down through there, but if you have technical problems, please try to get back in. Shouldn't be a big problem for you. If I drop off or any of the other co-hosts drops off, we'll continue the conversation until everybody is back on. Lurkers are welcome. Don't feel like you have to speak up, but we really do advocate for people talking and giving us your ideas and your thoughts about what's going on in rider education, certainly with context. Tonight's topic is professional development. And if you were listening a few moments ago, you could hear Murray and Ron talking about a professional development workshop that was done in New York a little while ago. But we're going to go a little bit different direction with this tonight. And this is going to be a two-part get together because not only are we going to do this tonight, but next month, Mark Weiss is going to come in and take this thought process a little bit further. So without anything else, I'm going to step up and just jump into the topic. Tonight's topic, professional development. And to kind of kick it off, one of the things I really struggled with was the definition of professional development. And with that, I'm going to stop the share real quick. And I want to come out to you all and ask you, what do you think professional development is? What is your definition, and how should we approach it in the rider education community? Put you on the spot right away. Welcome, John.
Well, and again, just kind of like talking out loud here, I know here, part of what we do in PDWs is we update policies and procedures. We update MSF policy. I mean, with some of the QA changes that went over on the last couple of years. So there's a lot of updating going on there, which is probably, I'm going to say 50% of what an average PDW is. I don't know how other states are, but as a site coordinator, I sometimes have had issues with coaches in terms of filling out incident reports and stuff like that. And so again, that's a policy and procedure issue. So it seems like a lot of the PDWs we've done here have been oriented that way. I mean, I've been to what as Harley calls it, continuous improvement workshops, and they get a couple of hundred people together on a weekend somewhere, and they do breakout workshops and do all kinds. It hasn't happened for a while. So, I mean, it's soup to nuts, you know, what's your pleasure kind of thing, as far as I'm concerned. I would like to see more, curriculum enhancement, I guess, is how I would say. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'd like to see more engagement with the curriculum. Now, Dan Orchowski here has put out a series of emails over this last year going over exercises relative to policy and procedure and how he wants them done and stuff. So that's been kind of an ongoing professional development. So I don't know. It's a tough one to come up with a definition.
So Murray used an acronym, PDW, Professional Development Workshop, and a lot of states use that as a methodology for having an update once a year or maybe multiple times a year. A couple people have thrown out their definition on the chat box. I'll let you read them, but I like Belinda's, always seeking to grow in your chosen profession. And then Paul, certification education that workers need to succeed in their career. Continued education. So if you have your, does anybody else have any ideas about the definition of professional development? Throw them out there, please. Don't be afraid to speak up.
Sorry, my camera doesn't work.
That's all right,
But,
Ron.
We have to do a professional development workshop every year to keep our certification in our state. And basically, we look at it as anything that enhances our expertise in our profession. If that makes any sense.
Is that the collective hour or is that the individual hour?
Well, the individual collectively, because
right.
our goal is to make ourselves better coaches overall, and that should be the guiding light for everyone in our profession, in my not so humble opinion.
Okay, I'll buy that. Anyone else? Dan Pedersen? No. You're on mute. We do this to him quite often.
Unmute.
There we go.
Okay. I had to find my button in the bottom. I was just scratching my head there, Don, so I wasn't raising my hand.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Something to say, though.
There's been a lot of focus and definitions on education, but I think it's any activity that enhances your career path.
Okay, so career path. Okay.
Hey, Don, this is Mark from Pennsylvania.
Go ahead,
So
Mark.
when I first became a rider coach, I noticed that the program was in existence in Pennsylvania for many years. So it seems like when the rider coach got trained, they taught the program a little bit differently. And the PDW gave us an opportunity to kind of level set everyone and kind of, work together. And I think that helped a lot. And the other thing, as you know, we're running 2 curriculums in Pennsylvania. And, the one curriculum will drill into a particular, 1 or 2 exercises every PDW. And, let's say the stopping exercise. And what they have is they have rider coach trainers there, and they will kind of go through the whole process and kind of, reevaluate you, if you will, and give you some tips, to become a better instructor, better rider coach. So I think that's very valuable. A PDW that is meaningful, like it's not just a gathering of, 100 rider coaches and coming together. We want to kind of, be there and actually develop ourselves professionally. That's kind of what our goal is, and that's what a PDW should accomplish.
All right, Mark. I'd like somebody else out there. Oh, Sarah Kay put out inspire teamwork, respect and individuality, encourage creativity. All good stuff for professional development. But I'm going to go, and I don't do this very often, I'm going to go with a Wikipedia definition in it, because I think they really get to the juxtaposition of what these 2 words can actually mean for everybody. So from Wikipedia, and I'll let you read that, It's quite a big paragraph, isn't it? And as we've discussed up to this point, there is a large variety of different approaches for getting to professional development. So there are a few words that are highlighted there. What are your thoughts on them as a definition? Because I'd like to start out with us all agreeing that maybe this is an appropriate definition for professional development, at least. What are your thoughts on the highlighted words?
Communities of practice for me is one of the key things that I strive to always be in, and that's in our community. Simply because everyone here and beyond teaches me how to become a better person, to be a rider coach. So that is the one that sticks out the most, the communities of practice. And I don't mean just practice itself, but I do mean the communities that I am to help me practice professional development.
I love that you touched on that, John, because it's not something you can do alone. It does take a community to kind of highlight some of these things. I would agree. Anybody else?
I was going to also kind of tag on to that idea, because those other items seem to focus on meeting the minimum standard, kind of like these are check boxes we have to tick to continue in our profession, or to say that we've done X, Y, or Z. But I kind of view it as going beyond that. And there's a social element as well.
Remember to bring that social element up here when we get to the latter slides. I'd appreciate it, Lynn. What else?
Both John and Lynn mentioned community and social element, and someone had said earlier about having PDWs where rider coaches can ride exercises and have rider coach trainers give them tips on better ways to do things. And that doesn't necessarily have to come from a rider coach trainer. That can come from peers very easily. I mean, rider coach trainers are, for the most part, rider coaches who every once in a while get to teach preps, as Mark Weiss so eloquently put it once. So just being able to get together with your peers like we do here, and getting together with them in person on a range and riding demonstrations for each other, is a great way to develop professionally and get input.
And so I'm going to come back to you as well. Just remind me, Rita, when we get to the part that says peer, okay? Because I think that's important as well. I like Mike put up that earner maintain misses the mark. It needs to include improvement and advancement. Does this get to that, or should we add it to the Wikipedia definition? I got a thumbs up from Sarah Kay on that one. And then Laura Holland, intensive versus informal learning. Intensive is not necessarily strictly true. For the second time, I see that the career adjacent activities that can jump professional areas as important. Would everybody agree with that? Yes or no? Okay. Bernie agrees. I saw him nod.
Before we leave this, Don, I see the ideally incorporating an evaluative stage, and that's I mean, the definition says ideally that it incorporates that. Seems like having some feedback loop that is some sort of evaluation of status or progress looks to be important in this definition.
It does, Dan, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So you'll be assigned the feedback loop.
Yeah, I kind of thought that was coming.
Okay. So Rita had peer, Dan had feedback. Lynn, what did you have? There was a word. Oh, the social aspect of it all. Because
So now I'm a little now I'm a little afraid to speak up because you're like making lists, but I love that everybody's talking about the socials and the behavioral part of it, because of course that is a big part of what we do now. But we have to, you asked about the highlighted words, credentials and academic degrees, you know, the professional part of development. We all wouldn't be sitting in this tribe talk if we didn't go through the 9 days of hell, or however you got to where you got to, right? And, you know, as sadly as much as we, you know, I jokingly say about all those letters that come after my name, I worked my ass off to get those letters, right? And so credentials and academic degrees, I like that you highlighted them, because those are important, because we learn what we need to know, because we learn what's important about communities and practice in our academic degrees. So because we took the time to study, and because we took the time to read and dig into what we've chosen to do, it's important. And so I like that you highlighted those too, but please don't put me on the list.
Believe it or not, I think that jumps in with Dan. So you're partnered
Good.
up with Dan, because aren't those
That's nice.
credentials or degrees a way of measurement or evaluation of your professional development?
Most definitely.
Okay.
I mean, we talk about that in my profession all the time, about ethically, you know, don't say you're this kind of counselor just because you've gone through one semester of it, right? You can't like market yourself as a grief counselor if you haven't spent money, spent time, and spent passion investing in that time. So my husband can teach somebody to ride a motorcycle, but I don't know if I'd trust him. He's sitting right next to me tonight. And so, I mean, because he knows how to ride a motorcycle, but, you know.
So I think that's an important distinction there, that, you know, if you are part of a profession, it's good to be evaluated and show the credentials, and those credentials mean something within the community of practice. So you just kind of tied it all together for me, and I appreciate that. So let's move on to examples of professional development. We've already talked about some, but what comes to mind as ways that professional development can happen? And you can repeat what we've talked about already.
We're in one right now. This is one way.
Oh, this?
This is what we're doing right this moment.
Sure.
I didn't catch that.
Well, yeah, interestingly enough, for a number of years, and I think this was a good change here, a lot of the initial PDWs that I went to back in the day were kind of the sage on the stage. The state director or somebody was getting up and telling us all about policy and procedure and how to do this and how to do that. And a couple of years ago, we made a dynamic shift and started structuring all the stuff that we were doing in the state along the same parameters as BRC. So we took the process of adult learning and basic rider course and kind of cross-applied that to the PDWs that we were presenting. And we saw a really nice uptake by the rider coaches. And when we did QA after the PDW, we saw the effects of doing it that way. So that was just a kind of an interesting, I think it's important. I mean, when we do rider coach training here, those are structured like BRCs. Yeah, so, and I think as a Motorcycle Safety Foundation, we have to take that model and apply it throughout our whole organization with whatever we do. Just reinforces everything.
Okay, Murray, you get reinforcement. So what are some of the ways that we receive professional development? Guys, gonna make me work?
No, I think the recent VRETs that Ray Oakes has been doing for the last year or so is a form of professional development.
Okay. What's this picture? Because I know some of you are actually in this picture. Not gonna say who. Smiling. SF.
That looks like a PDW somewhere or a site meeting or something of that nature.
It does.
IRETs.
IRETs. So different types of workshops that we do. I mean, we've been hitting hard on the PDWs, right? But things like IRETs, VRETs, RRETs, IFC, and SMSA, are those workshops where we can receive professional guidance, professional knowledge that we can take and be better with? What would be something outside of those that could be professional development?
Don, I'd like to throw something out.
Go ahead.
This is Betsy. I've just joined you. I just got out of work, had dinner. But I think a really well-done QA can be a great opportunity for professional development. I recall a few years ago when a fellow rider coach and I had the opportunity to have a QA person spend a good part of the day with us. And when we were done, I think he probably spent a good hour and a half at the end of the day with us, just kind of reviewing the entire day. And we looked at things that went, I mean, there were no real serious issues, but, you know, we kind of looked at things that worked and things that he had questions about. And in the end, I think we got probably a lot more very individualized and personalized professional development from that. So I think a well-done QA visit can also enhance professional development in a very individualized way.
And a less formal version of that is, you know, coaches doing having a chat after the class or during the class, you know, how did that go and what can we do better next time and what worked and what didn't work and et cetera.
No, I agree with that, Lynn. I think that's definitely kind of an ongoing part of things because let's face it, the actual PDW things happen, once a year? The IRETs happen, whatever. I mean, not everybody can attend the VRETs. So I think that we have to look for opportunities to build in professional development and do it as often as possible.
Well, can I go back to the informal development part? What about dropping cones for fellow coaches? What about just stepping, instead of coming from being a QA or the kind of going from the higher developmental part, professional part, why not just go and be a range aide for a weekend? Like literally just do nothing but drop cones and ride demos. Don't coach at all. Just drop cones and ride demos for another coach and you know, help them, and then also remind yourself how hard of a job that is.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think anything that we could do to put ourselves in a learning situation, learning opportunity is a good thing to do.
Love it. Any other ideas?
Mentoring, I think, would be another method. And Betsy was talking about QAs. You know, we look at QAs as mentoring opportunities.
Okay, I would agree. Anybody disagree? What about self-development? Ron, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to get even more basic. Someone mentioned dropping cones. Just go watch another class. Don't at all, just watch them work. As when I do a QA visit, I like to think that I learn as much from that visit as the people I'm doing the QA for. Unless I'm not paying attention, then I don't learn anything. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. Excellent. Just observing, is that a way to self-develop?
Well, I like to think of everything as a learning experience if you allow it to be.
Okay. I think that was Nicole's, right? Have a mentor, somebody to guide you. And then experience. I think we've hit on that a couple times. And then peers. Who said peers earlier? Is that you, Rita?
I don't know. I could admit to whatever you need.
So nobody else is admitting to it. So I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire on peers. Didn't I say we're coming back to it? We're not finished, but it's being highlighted.
Some on here know my philosophy is everything can wrap back to the BRC, either as better ways to do things and apply lessons learned. I think, yeah, Betsy typed that in the chat, that there's so many opportunities to learn if we allow ourselves to be ongoing learners, because whatever we're doing in life, we can look at it as a lesson to be better. And certainly discussing those opportunities with peers helps sort them out, especially for people who are popular learners and need to chat about things to get them to solidify.
My daughter got mad at me one night because, you know, I was trying to pass some, you know, nugget of reality or knowledge to her. And she goes, "Dad, why does everything have to be a lesson?" And, you know, she really stumped me by that for years. You know, I carried that whole back and forth with her at that moment. But it truly does come down to it that, you know, everything that we discuss is a lesson. And if I'm not sharing good information with people and I know it, then perhaps I'm the one that's not being a very good friend or father or mentor or peer. So now I look at things a little bit differently. So I'm going to hit a lot on individual development because I think, as was discussed a little bit a few minutes ago or a few seconds ago, the individual is the most responsible for professional development. So if somebody would please, I've got a whole bunch of stuff up there on the screen. How would each one of those be a good way to develop individually, and why would we want to go to those resources?
Don, I see you have my association up there, and wow, yeah. So I appreciate that. It's the Rider Education Research, the Skilled Motorcyclist Association. We have a tremendous amount of research. That I looked at it the other day. I think we have more than 400 published research articles. Almost all of them are PDFs downloadable, and it's been my responsibility going on 15 years now to gather and evaluate that research, look at the research and share it and try to summarize it and put it in a form on our website. And it's just been such a learning experience for me to be able to put my hands into and wrap my head around the research that's available in the whole arena of motorcyclist safety. I was just involved in a conversation yesterday and the day before around lane splitting and taking a look at the research and what does the research actually tell us versus what we may think, or in some cases the misinterpretation of the research that others have published. So I encourage it.
So, by the way, we didn't set this up, you know, just serendipity. Dan doesn't always show up, but I will.
Don didn't know I was popping in tonight. No.
I will give credit where credit is due, though, because, you know, part of being a professional is understanding why we are where we are and where we could go, given the best data we know. And so that's why writer education research is up there. And I have learned tons by just going out to Google Scholar, and just typing in a phrase of something I want to find in writer education, or something to do with motorcycle training elements. What other resources are really good? If you saw my preview for this, I said, check out the Writer Coach Guide on professional development. What did it say in the Writer Coach Guide? Does it say anything at all about professional development? Oh, you guys are fun tonight. So, Nicole, I'm going to pick on you because you just dropped the text in there. What did you put in your text?
I put that first bullet point there, the professional literature is the bread and butter of professional development.
Okay.
So that, I think, is the first, most basic, most essential place to start if you're going to do, as we're talking about now, individual development, self-development.
Okay, I would agree. Anybody disagree? When you sign your rules of professional conduct or MSF or any other organization, do they tell you what you should consider as your go-to information?
I'd have to pull the card out, Don, but that was one of the first things that went through my mind when we started talking about this. This is Betsy again. I think it's a part of what we need to do in order to be the best we can be.
So explain that a little bit more, if you would, Betsy. You said pull the card out.
Well, you have to understand, I just got home from work. I just ate dinner and I just jumped in on this at the last minute.
No, you're in it.
I guess I am in it. But I think that we have a responsibility to continue our professional development, to offer our students really the best state-of-the-art training that's possible. And I think, again, that professional development can happen on so many different levels. And it's important for each of us to self-assess, to figure out, what our needs are. It's not like anybody comes to us, like I've done clinical supervision with staff where you could maybe work with people on a one-on-one basis to help them determine what their training or learning needs are. We're kind of out there on our own, and I think we have to take responsibility to figure out what it is we need to do this well. And, hopefully our site administrators can help with that. But we're kind of out there on our own for a large part of this. At least that's my feel.
I don't think we are. And I'm trying to prove that to other people.
Well, I mean, you're doing this, which is great, but think about this, Don. Lynn Vanderwater sent out a note to a lot of the coaches who work with her. I happened to catch it a little while ago after I finished my dinner, but how many of them have chosen to come on to a thing like Tribe Talk? I think that something like this is a wonderful opportunity for people to, enhance their professional development and to think about things like this. But there's a self-selection process here. And I don't know what we do about that.
So Belinda talked about academic resources like that she gets in her other professions and brings them in to writer coaching. Would that be other professional associations that we can apply to our professional development as writer coaches? Who here, by show of hands, either electronic or natural, has taken some kind of temperament or personality test in their workspace outside of being a rider coach. Okay. So maybe half, maybe a little bit more than half now. I could see that. Does that help with our individual development? And how?
You got to know yourself, don't you? I mean, being able to know yourself kind of helps you learn about everybody else. I mean, if you know yourself and how you learn and your personality type, I'm all about somebody taking some Myers-Briggs. Knowing somebody, I would love if everyone came in and just gave me all their letters, every student, so I wouldn't have to work so hard.
It's been so long, I don't think I can do it. I know it starts with I-S-T-C, I'm not sure.
Well, I can do everybody's for y'all. How about that? We'll just send that out.
Yeah.
But I love it.
As a complete aside, if you're desiring to do MBTI or something like that, I have enough for us all that we can do the official MBTI thing. But I think it's important. I like what Belinda said about being self-aware, understanding ourselves, and not to beleaguer all this and to keep moving along. Let's talk about this little thing right here. This is called the Johari window. Everything that we've talked about kind of leads up to this as far as development. There's what we know and what we don't know. And then there is what others know and what others don't know. And this window kind of shows us that there's always going to be something hidden or something blind that isn't shared. But to give developmental feedback to others, to be a mentor or to be a peer, there are some steps that help make it easier. And that's what's written over there on the right-hand side. If anything strikes you, please go ahead and say it now. Or if you don't understand what this window is showing us, let me know so we can talk through it a little bit.
Maybe it's been a long day, Don, but can we talk through it a little bit?
Sure. Somebody else had something to say first.
So this is Andy in Arizona.
All right, Andy.
I just happened to be thinking about the Johari window right before you mentioned it, because there are things that I don't know and don't even know that I don't know them, which I think is represented by the lower right quadrant. So knowing this about myself, part of my professional development is to pay professionals to teach me. And by that, I mean I regularly participate at least twice a year in taking a skills enhancement class, like, for example, from Yamaha Riders course. And then other courses are offered here in the area by the local police departments to develop those skills. And I go there to practice not only the skills, but to watch how they coach, to watch how they instill confidence in what they're trying to teach me. And then unashamedly stealing some of the best practices to use with my students when I teach. And so I think for me, that's probably what works the best, because as I said before, there are things that I don't know and don't even know that I don't know them. And that's what intrigues me about becoming a better professional and helping my students develop confidence through competence. Because if I'm competent, that helps me develop confidence when I participate in these other courses. And so I know that if it works for me, it might work for students who are placing that type of confidence in me as their rider coach.
I think you articulated that wonderful, Andy, and I appreciate it. And I want to tie this into some of the other discussions we've had about rider coaches who don't go to participate as students in different courses. Say if you're certified in the BRC or maybe the BRC2, and you don't go out and try out an ARC or a dirt bike school or the circuit riders course or the street riders course, or go to Yamaha champions or some other professional development. I think this ties in really well with that. And just to clarify a little bit for Nicole, if you haven't figured it out yet, the top left window, the blue one that says open free area, that's what's visible and known to everybody, known to yourself and known to others. The window to the right of that is unknown by self, but partially known by others. And that line, let me take that back. It's fully known by others, but only partially known by you. That's your blind area, what you don't necessarily see. The bottom left quadrant, unknown by others, you know some of that and you keep some of that hidden, but you don't share everything with everybody. You don't want to share too much information. And then the bottom right quadrant, the upper left hand part is kind of where you're talking with other people and you share some of the discovery of who you are and who they are. The other observation would be at that moment, they're giving you an observation that you may or may not know. And then the self-discovery part would be something that you find out for yourself that they're not going to see. So does that make sense? But to get the whole picture, the whole window, what does it take? Anybody? Sarah B?
It looks like it takes give and take between all the participants.
Right, right. I guess you have to be vulnerable, I think is the way we put it. And you're not vulnerable unless there's trust established and that you have a relationship enough that you can accept feedback from somebody as worthwhile and not just critical. And that's kind of what the right hand wording gets to, is it has to be private and comfortable and safe. And you have to have a good relationship with that person that you trust enough to share such things. So the developmental feedback loop, who talked about that earlier? Dan? The evaluation part of it?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about evaluation. I think that has to be, we're often scared or don't like the word evaluation. The word evaluation is threatening. So I wish we could come up with something else that would provide us the same thing. Feedback maybe is a less scary word.
Sure.
I think unless we have feedback about our performance, regardless of what area that is, we have a hard time individually, all by ourselves, trying to figure out what our actual status, our current status is, where we are at, and what else is still out in front of us that we can move to. So having some kind of an evaluative loop or some kind of a feedback loop, I think is critical to growth.
So I like the word feedback, and I know you and I personally have had conversations about the difference between quality assurance and quality improvement methods. And I think it follows along those same lines.
This reminds me a little bit of peer teaching in an RTP. A lot like peer teaching.
It is, isn't it? Is there a reason why we do peer teaching in a rider coach prep?
Absolutely. I guess that open free area is our topic, that reference from the guide, our information that we're starting with. We're not quite sure how we're gonna present it. And then when we're done with our presentation, we get to be evaluated by our peers, and we get to be evaluated by our trainer at the time.
So that fits rather well. I'm glad you brought that up, Rick. Really kind of drives home that point. So I want to get to motivation and goals, and I know I'm covering a lot of ground tonight, and this particular chart is kind of busy, but intrinsic value, and you hear Ray talk about intrinsic and extrinsic value a lot. Intrinsic meaning it's from the inside. It comes from you. You have a desired goal to accomplish, and you direct yourself in that nature. Whereas extrinsic value is derived from people outside of you, an external source, group, or person. You know, to be certified in something, you have to do what others say. And so the chart below kind of talks about that in a graphic way, where your motivation, your individual attributes, your work effort, and organizational support all affect your performance. And depending on how that performance comes out, you know, in the feedback loop that you get a reward extrinsically from others, or you get that personal feeling of value, the direct reward for doing it, and it can either motivate you more, or you can go and compare it with what other people think, and that's where that equity comparison comes in, and whether you're satisfied or not, and the loop starts all over again. I do this because mostly the intrinsic value is what we look at from people that are motivated, really motivated to be part of a profession. Otherwise, it could be just a job. Now, it's important to have some extrinsic value, but the intrinsic value is more important.
Can you tell us, Don, just a little bit about what the video is going to tell us?
You know, it was just a quick snippet from a guy who was working at a restaurant, and every day when everybody else would quit work and go out and have a drink with friends, he would go home, and he loved photography. And what he would do is he would go home after he'd done his day's work, and he'd practice his photography and go out every day and take more pictures. And he talks about the decade or more that it took for him to get good at what he wanted to do, photography, versus what he was doing, working at some restaurant. And he talked about the commitment and the intrinsic motivation that it took to go there. When everybody else wanted to go and do other things, he had that focus that that's what he was going to do. He was going to practice his photography. And within, I think it was 15 years total, he was photographing all the important people, you know, Charlize Theron, Brad Pitt, people that launched his career because he practiced so much. And so that was just a quick rundown of that. So John, and I think somebody else was talking about the social aspects. I think it was Lynn. You were talking about the social aspect of this professional development and what I would call intrinsic motivation to be better or to improve. How does that fit into the executive functions that we know of from the Motorcycle Safety Foundation?
Well, if you think about when we cut students loose on their second run in the circuit or the exercise after where they're doing the circuit and the lane change on full-size ranges, that they progress more naturally in those second runs because they're not obsessing about the nuts and bolts of it. They're kind of going out and having the full experience. And I think when rider coaches are at a training event and they have those conversations in the hallway, the learning sometimes happens better because they're not focused on the nuts and bolts.
What else does this slide highlight about those executive functions and goal setting and professional development? Does it just happen? If you just show up, does it happen?
No, it's apparent that there has to be some type of a strategy that's employed to accomplish anything. To arrive at a destination, you have to plan it and follow a specific set of steps.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I come a little high strung sometimes because I do have ideas that may or may not contribute much to the situation. But then after such as now that we're talking about the executive functions as well as the, I would say, social and emotional commitment behind it, then I can settle down because now I can hear other views on my thinking, which may or may not agree with what I was actually thinking, and always improve on what before I was thinking is now aided by other rider coaches or any situation that I'm learning in to make me a better person and see, instead of with the blinders on like a horse, now it opens my eyes to see more of what's available to me as far as developing as a rider coach and a person.
I love that, John, how you articulate that, because that really goes back to what we're talking about here with the equity comparison of what you think and what other people think, and whether that derives satisfaction and your motivation in the back.
It's more not just satisfaction, because I always feel that when I'm talking to other people and they're, enlightening me, it's more of me wanting more from that point, because now I'm in that environment that I can get more without me just in single terms, just in my case, looking up that information. I'm always getting more and more. Sarah Kay can attest to that in a lot of cases, because I'll have one way of thinking and then she'll change it. And then we'll have that fun discussion and we'll come up with the conclusion. And I love doing that because it helps me not only see my point of view, right or wrong, it also brightens my point of view through someone else. And that's what I'm always learning from.
I think that's wonderful that you're open to such things. I found that once I became open to the fact that I'm generally wrong on my initial thoughts, that I have to go back and get feedback to maybe get more right than I thought I was, it became a wonderful world. So thank you.
Exactamundo.
I threw this up here. And by the way, this is MSF copyrighted. I didn't steal it. They own it. They know it. I know we talk about levels probably too much, but the subtitle to this is very important. And I've seen it on the last two versions of the Rider Coach levels. These are not labels. They are self-assessment used for professional development. And that's verbatim off of the slide that I stole to look this up. But the one thing that our a work group a couple years ago with Dan Pedersen and Rita and Mark Weiss and a couple other people, Sarah Bernick, Jason Herheim, that we came on was this seemed structured, but almost too structured for professional development and learning. So up front, I talked about this was part one of a two-part series. And I wanted to show at the bottom of these writer coach levels, and once again, verbatim off the slide that I stole it off of, motivation, curiosity, experience, values, and reflection are what make all this work. And so next month, the Tribe Talk will be with Mark Weiss from Arizona, going over part two of professional development. And what he will be sharing with us is a more dynamic system for self-measuring where you are for professional development. And we talked a little bit about this in the happy hour, I think last week, maybe the week before. But essentially, if you look at this pentagon, the center is what you would consider writer level 1 or writer coach level 1. The yellow would be 2, the green would be 3, and then the blue area on the outer edges would be 4. And at any time, you stretch in different directions. So you may be working on facilitation and teaching, but your environmental management may spring to a lower level. Or you may be working on curriculum knowledge and skill, and your learning principles kind of slip. So he's going to go over this next month, and we'll continue our discussion on professional development. As always, I'm going to share a couple things here. If you can't get more people to show up, we're the ones that are missing out. Because the more people that show up, the more people that give their information and ideas, the more we grow. I think that's very important. If you have ideas about future topics, please let me know. If you want to host or volunteer to give a professional development in Tribe Talk, please let me know, because we're more than willing to let other people have the opportunity to share information. And most of all, if you're not a mentor, please be a mentor to somebody and be mentored by somebody. I'm going to wrap up here pretty soon, but before we do that, we haven't done this for a while. It's time for our Tribe Talk poll. So 2 questions should have just popped up on the screen. It's your opportunity to test your knowledge. And funny, I didn't select these for the night. They just popped up, but they seem to have a little significance. For those of you who are not participating by video, the first question is, experience and conclusion is a method that refers to A, setting up and tearing down range exercises, B, the BRC knowledge test having only 3 possible answers, C, the sequence of shifting a motorcycle, D, the steps for rider coach demonstration in all rider courses, and E, the basic template for level 2 classroom. Second question tonight, the Rider Coach Guide tab that best provides content for Rider Coach professional development is A, tab 4, instructional plan, B, tab 6, classroom lessons, C, tab 7, range exercises, D, tab 5, teaching the BRC, or E, all the tabs. We have about 50% voted. I'll give you a few more minutes here. And while we're waiting, if anybody has anything to talk about, please go ahead and do so.
Hey, Don.
Yes?
Yeah, I got out the Rider Coach Guide just to see what was up. And it's interesting because there's no mention of professional development in the table of contents. And the place that it appears first is on page 5 under quality assurance, stating that sites should provide quality or provide professional development beyond minimal standards.
Page 6 and 7, Murray.
Page 6 and 7. Okay.
What does it say there?
Well, I didn't go any further. I just saw that and said, oh, kind of interesting stuff.
It is. We're about 84% voted at 3.5 minutes. Is there anybody that hasn't voted yet that still wants to?
Ah, there we go.
All right, I'm going to end polling and we're going to share the results here. Who believes that E is the correct answer? 91%. Experience and conclusion is the method and basic template for the level 2 classroom. For the second question, the Rider Coach Guide tab that best provides content for Rider Coach professional development is, and the answer is D, believe it or not. Although all the tabs do provide some professional development, the best tab, tab 5, teaching the BRC, has all the underpinnings and is best for you to individually explore to learn the most. So little struggle on that one tonight. All right, everybody, we've come to the end of Tribe Talk for 21 February 2021. Thanks for showing up tonight. I can't wait for Mark to be here next month for this one. As always, we'll get together for happy hour from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. Any alibis for anybody out there? Questions about the content tonight? I'm about 2 weeks behind on videos. When I post the video from tonight, I will add the slides and any other information that is available. Y'all are so quiet. I must be boring.
Thanks, Don. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Have a wonderful night, and hopefully we'll see everybody on Wednesday.
Thanks, Don. Take care, everybody.
Good night.